In this tutorial, I'll show you how to get started with UV unwrapping our house model. I've added a bit of more detail to the model from the previous tutorial. First thing I'm going to do is just simplify it a little bit. The interior is going to be very difficult to work with whilst it's actually inside the model. So I'm going to make that a separate object. I think the best way to go about that is if I just go into edge mode, so let's actually pick the object I want. I'm just going to double click and just look, I'm just getting those edges around there, and then I'll do the same for these windows. I'm just holding shift down and selecting those edges there. You can just do these one at a time if you want to. So I've just got those edges selected around there. So if I go into wireframe, you can see that I'm going to separate the interior from the rest of the model, so just around all the sort of window openings and door openings, all the sort of openings there. So if we go into let's have a look, we're looking for detach, and if I do that, you can see that we get the thick border edges around here where I've separated those. I should then be able to select the object. It's not a separate object yet, but if I go into face mode, I'll just double click on a face in there, look, I think it's selected all those internal faces. And what I'll do now, I'll do extract down here. There's a separate and there's an extract. The extract is the one I want. And you can see it's all sort of highlighted everything. If I just click off it, we can see I've got that separate object there now. And if I just right click and go into object mode, I can actually move that away. Look, there it is, which is quite cool. Now what's good about that is because I've frozen all the translations and stuff like that, you can see it's all zero. What I do want to do then is delete all history. So let's just pick everything again and delete all history, and let's just double check it's got rid of that. Yeah, and we can pull this out like so, and if we want to work on this, it just makes it a lot easier as a separate object. But if I want to put it back in again, look, I can just zero this and it goes back in, and I can add that as to the group as well. Let's just have a look in our outliner. I think by default it's added it to the group as well. Yeah, there it is. So look, we've got all our separate objects. It's actually, it's put it under here. It's grouped these two things together. So if I'm just going to tidy this up now. I'm going to just go Shift P. This is just a sort of another group node, so I can just delete that. And then look, I'm just going to middle drag those onto that. So now I've got everything. You know, I should name these to make it a little bit easier to see what they are, but it had just grouped those two things together. So look, there's the interior, that's separate. So that's quite cool. That just make it easier to work on. The other thing you can actually do with interior models if you're working on them, so say I wanted to see while I'm working on this, or just easier to put things in, is to make it so it's not double-sided. At the moment, we're seeing both sides of the polygons, even though polygons do have a sort of a way the faces point to. At the moment, double-sided polygons are turned on, or double-sided rendering, sorry, is turned on. If I go to the attribute editor and I look for the shape node, the second node in on this object, and if I go to the render stats, I can turn off the double-sidedness of it, so I can then actually see through it. And then if I put that on a display layer, I could then just have it visible but not accidentally keep picking it whilst I'm working on it. So that might be quite a good way to work, turn off the double-sided rendering on that object. So right, I'm going to put that back inside anyway. I'll just zero that number there. And I'll then show you how to start actually doing the UVs on this object. I won't do all of them. It will take quite a long time to unwrap all of this, but we'll bring up the UV editor to start with, like so. And I'll just give myself a little bit more space on the UV editor over here. And let's have a look at this. I'm sort of doing this as I go along. So what I want to do is see if I could unwrap the main walls of the object. So I'll probably separate those to start with. So I'm just going to go into face mode, and this is actually where I want to start using display layers. So let's start putting the things I don't want to use on display layers to start off with. So look, all of those bits and pieces, I'll go back to my classic view and I'll put those on the display layer, and I'm just going to template those like so, just so I can just focus on the main bulk of the building first and do this in stages. So at the moment, look, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I sometimes, just to sort of clarify what I'm looking at, I go create a camera-based UV, and look, there they all are, and then I can just move this out of the way over here, so I can kind of understand roughly what the UVs are doing. So the first thing I'm going to select Let's see if I can get this working nicely and quite quickly. I'm just going to try and select the bulk of the walls there. I'll deselect porch there. I haven't done a very good job of selecting that. Let me just tidy that up a little bit. So I'm just deselecting by holding control down. I just want to add these to the selection. And I think I've got everything now. I don't think I have. Let's try that again. I'm holding control and shift down there. Oh, and I've added selection over here. I'm doing this a bit flakily. Okay, I think that's roughly how I want it. And I'll get those polygons down there as well. I don't want any floor ones. I'm hoping what I can do is unwrap all of this by just putting a seam line down it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to separate this to start off with. So I'll just do another projection on this. I mean, I could try cylindrical map, but I'll just try doing an ordinary planar map just from the Z. So just front on. So Z, apply, close. You can see that separated that out now, left those bits remaining. And I need to put a seam in. So I'm going to go to edge mode. I'm going to pick from that edge and double click down to that one. Oh, no, it's not going to select the ones in between. So I'll manually just select those. And I go over here and I'm just going to cut those edges like so. And I should see there's a thicker line now. That is actually a texture border, not a border edge. Let's just see if these will unfold, see if it likes it. So we'll try a couple of different unfolds. We'll try that one. Blimey, that's not done a bad job actually. That's not too bad, is it? You can see it's sort of unfolded all of that. The other one you can try using, which can sometimes be a little bit neater, is the unfold along the U and the V. So the U is the horizontal, which has done a really nice job, and the V is the vertical. And I think that's just done it a little bit better. It's kept it kind of quite true. You can see what you might want to do is separate the windows out of there, because the windows have got all that framework around them. So you might want to separate those out of that projection so you can add more detail into them. But you can see now you could actually, you know, if it had plank work or brickwork or anything, you could actually put that on there. So I'll scale this down a wee bit. And depending on the organization of your UV sheet or texture sheet, or how many you're depending on using, you might want to put a line down here. So if I select that edge, and that edge, and I just do a cut there, like so, it means that I can just separate these away. So if I go right click and go to UV shell, I can just move this one all away, broken those off. So that makes, you know, that could be one texture sheet. That makes quite a neat square, like so. So I'll move those down to there, and I'll just move them to one side for the time being. So I might do that. What you could do is assign a whole texture to that, a material to those polygons whilst they're selected. So I could right click on those and go assign new material. Let's assign like a blend material, like so. Go right to the end over here, and there it is. If I just give it a color so I know what it is, I'll make it red like that, and that's a texture applied to those. Well, no, sorry, material color applied. And then what I can do, I can then take this out and apply texture, and that texture will only be applied to those actual polygons. So you can have multiple UV projections on things and multiple materials, and have different textures applied to them. I'm going to move this out of the way because whenever you do a projection, it will appear in this area here between 0 and 1 on the U and the V. So I just move this out of the way, and the texture's tile, so it will still display it if I get it in exactly the right position. But that's okay for now. What I might do actually before I do that, I'll do my snapshot. I would always recommend doing your snapshot here. So you can do that, set the size nice and large, and that will dump out the wireframe template that you can take into Photoshop and start painting. So I'll close that down, but that's what I'd recommend doing, and then move it over here. And you can always line that up a little bit later on. But that's kind of organised the walls for you. The roof, again, I might do a top-down projection, so I'd probably separate the chimney from that. So I'd pick those faces there and just do another front projection on those, so planar it, and just move it out of the way for now, and we can look at that later. And then the rest of the roof, we should be able to sort of open this up, and again, it's looking at it almost like as an origami kind of thing. So use the UV to help you select things, so that it's a lot easier to select these things in the UV editor. Like so, and I'm just wondering, if we do a top-down projection here, where do we need to put the cuts in it? Probably along these seams here. So I'll just try putting some cuts into them like so. So from there, there and there, and that one there. And probably that one. Just separate probably the ends that I think they're called like gable ends. We'll separate those from the rest of it, and the same at the front as well. And then we should be able to do a top-down projection onto the roof, and that should be quite neat. You don't have to use the cut edges here. You can just do different projections. I mean, probably what would have been quicker is like this. Just pick these faces there and add selection again. Me trying to do things too quickly. And these faces here, double check you haven't got anything else selected in between. I'll just put it into wireframe so I can absolutely be sure. And I've just sort of selected those two sort of, I think they're called like, yeah, gable ends on the roof. And I'll do another projection on those. So create planar in the Z. So there they are, kind of layered on top of each other, but they are separate. So if I go into the UV shell tool, I should be able to separate them. There they are. Now if I turn on shaded, like so, I can see one of them is back to front. It doesn't really matter, but obviously if you have text on one of them or something, it will display backwards on this one. So you can flip that round. If I bring up my UV toolkit, you can scale them inside out. There's a little setting you need. Let me have a look. Where does that live? Under transform. You can flip them in here, but if you turn off this prevent negative scale, like this, you can just do the old-fashioned way of just flipping them inside out that way. But if you don't want to do that, if you want to do everything very precisely, you can pick those and you can flip it there. Okay. But the old way we used to do everything was just scale them inside out. And so they're both facing the right way. When they've gone a bit purple like that, it's just blue on top of red. It's where there's faces on top of each other. And this now we should be able to look, again, using the UV editor to select them. We'll do a top-down projection on these. So create planar again. I'm just using the planar pretty much all the time. Y-axis is the vertical. Go apply. Have a look at that. It's not too bad. That's looking down on the roof. You can see under here, this is the eaves just sort of tucked in underneath. If we unfold it, it should be pretty cool. So let me just select the UVs and we'll do an unfold. Let me just tidy this window up a bit. It gets very, very cluttered over on the UV toolkit. So we've got the unfold here again. I'm going to do a folding along. So the U and the V. And we'll move those away so it's not overlapping. So there's the roof unfolded. That's quite nice. We haven't done the gable ends, so let's just pick those and we'll do them on the U again and the V. And you can see it unfolds the eaves underneath. So what we can do now is lay this out onto our texture sheet. And again, we could assign another material to these. You don't have to just have one texture sheet with one material assigned to an object, but let me just try and use my material space a little bit more economically. I'll do something like that. I mean, if they are sharing the same texture, if they've got the same identical texture on them, then just have them on top of each other. So look, if I just turn this around, I could just have these on top of each other like this, and there's nothing wrong with that. They will just share the same texture, so it saves a lot of texture space. It saves you repeating doing the same texture over and over again. So they can share. I can line them up precisely if I wanted to. And I've got room in there for the chimney as well. So if I put a cut line in the chimney, I should be able to unwrap that quite neatly. So if I go from that edge up to there, I think, yeah, that's selected. And the top of it, I need to just leave one edge connected. So if I just do those, and if I cut all of those, like so, I should be able to unfold those. So let's do the unfold along the U and then the V, and that should flip the lid on the top. Not particularly very well. There you go. The 3D unfold did a slightly better job of that. So using the two is quite good. The 3D unfold is a little bit fussy when you've got stuff called, it doesn't like what they call non-manifold geometry. So sometimes if you've got extruded edges out for like transparencies and stuff like that, like for hair on a carrot, you might have some edges that you've extruded out to put transparency. The 3D unfold doesn't like them, or doesn't seem to like them, whereas the unfold along has no issues with them. So there's another texture sheet. So again, you can then select all those UVs, do another snapshot, and when you're happy, just move all of those down here and out the way. And you can line these all up later on. You know, they're in the approximate shape. It might just be that once you've sort of textured them, you might just be wanting to move them all back up here, or just tweak them a little bit in here so they line up with the projections cleanly. The last thing I want to do is get the veranda roof and the sort of the porch floor textured. So this should unfold okay. I just want to put a few cuts into it. I've got the shading on here using this icon, and you can see this has gone orange here because this is at the back of that projection here where I did the camera, so that's why that's gone that colour. So let's go to edge mode. Let's pick that edge there and that edge there. We'll just cut those. Yeah, and then the same on that side, that one there and that one there. You can use symmetry tool. It will, if your object's symmetrical, it will do the cuts across both sides, so it'll save a little bit of time. And I think we're just trying folding it from there. So let's just pick the UVs and we'll just do the unfold. And that's done a really good job. So there, the underneath faces, yeah, those two under there. Then you've got the front face, the side faces, and the top faces. So yeah, we can. That's absolutely fine. So I will just, again, in UV shell mode, just select that. I'll rotate it so it's nice and neat. That'll do, and I'll move that over into our projection area, and I can scale it up in a bit. We've just got to do the floor now, so I'll do the same one. I don't need to do too much to this because it hasn't got an underside. I just need to cut that edge there and that edge there, and that should just unfold really nicely. So let's have a look. So pick the UVs again, and we'll go unfold, and yeah, you can see that, and we can rotate that and move that onto our texture sheet. And we might be able to optimize this a bit better, but what we kind of want to do is make sure our texture scale is fairly regular. So what I would do at some point is turn on the checker grid here, just to make sure all the checkers are kind of the same size and shape. They're pretty good. There's a little bit of distortion here where it's had to allow for the unfolding of the window frames, and like I said, if you were a perfectionist about this, if you really wanted to get it totally right, I'd probably make this window separate. You can see the roof has got slightly higher resolution of texture across it, so you know, you might want to scale those down a little bit so the sort of checkers match the rest of it. It might be that, you know, using the space well, you might better fit the floor onto here as well. I think we'd probably better squeeze it onto here somewhere. So that's always something to bear in mind as well. But yeah, that's got the basic sort of UVs unwrapped, and then how you organize your texture sheets is totally up to you. You could have them all on one sheet if you wanted to. If you scaled them down, you could fit them all onto one sheet, or you can select the faces, so like this, and assign materials to those specific faces and have, you know, individual textures associated to those materials on those faces. So that's sort of got the UVs unwrapped pretty good.